have to make it known to our fellow citizens that it is not immigrants that are causing these problems. It is technology. Immigrants are getting scapegoated for something they have nothing to do with. So the question is, how do we solve this problem for the American people? We have to take a new vision to our fellow citizens as fast as possible. If you've heard anything about me and my campaign, you've heard something like this. There's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. You remember hearing that? Remember the first time you heard that? Nothing quite like the first time, am I right? First time you heard it, it seemed like a gimmick. It seemed like there's no way that would ever happen. But if you dig into our country's history, you find this is a deeply American idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of our country. He called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King championed it and fought for it in the 60s, and it is what he was fighting for in the day he was assassinated in 1968. 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 60s and 70s. It was so mainstream that it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971 as the Family Assistance Plan. And 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state receives between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? And how do they fund it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Technology, that's right. AI, data, software, autonomous vehicles. A study just came out that said that your data, our data, is now worth more than oil. How many of you received your data check in the mail? None of us. In Alaska, they call this the oil check, and they love it. We're going to call this the tech check, and all of America is going to love it.
Is a federal jobs guarantee better than a universal basic income?
I will tell you why. A simple reason. I think most people want to work. They want to be a productive member of society. I think it's a very deeply ingrained feeling that people have. They don't want to sit on the side. Yes, of course, getting a guaranteed income is better than having nothing and sleeping out on the street, that's for sure. But I think people want to be part of our humanity, to be truthful, and how we feel good about ourselves is when we are productive members of our society. We're contributing something. And I think people feel that very strongly. And I think there is more than enough work to be done in so many areas. And our job is to say, if you are able to work, we have a job for you.
And in the process, there's a lot of people who I think feel like they're being left behind because we're in the middle of something else going on here. Nothing to do with Donald Trump. We're in the middle of what I'd call, other people call, the fourth industrial revolution. Is there going to be middle class where, Moore's Law, the IT, the way we're walking, artificial intelligence? Look what's happened with all the retail jobs that got lost because of Amazon. Now people go to Amazon, and so all across the country, a couple 100,000 people lost their jobs. And people are worried. Truck drivers I talked to are saying, well, they're going to automate trucking. I know, and I'm not going to have a job. I'm 52 years old. I'm making $80,000 a year, busting my neck. And so,
what's the answer to that?
The answer is we've got to talk to them and tell them there's ways to do this. The way we can do this is, first of all, acknowledge. My dad also had an expression for real. He said, Joey, I don't expect the government to solve my problem, but I expect these to understand my problem. So you go out and you say, look, these changes we can mold like we've done every other major technological revolution, going all the way back to the cotton gin and the Luddites back in England in the early 1800s. And what we have to do, though, is we have to let them know there's things for example, we have to have continuing education. And I mean continuing education. That is when you're out of school and you've gone through high school and you've gone on a job and you end up finding out you're out of work. Well, there are 100,000 jobs out there in high-tech manufacturing that people can learn, but you need to be able to train people. So you have to be in a position where you team up with community colleges and corporations and you teach people how to run a photovoltaic machine on the floor that makes solar panels. People can do these things. They have to know. And the other side of that, I'm getting too wonky here, but the point is that I think we should be, for example, we could easily do it, triple the money we spend for what they call Title I, which is at-risk school districts. And make sure every single child, 4, 5, and 6 years old, is 3, 4, and 5, is in pre-kindergarten. because all the data's in now. If a kid goes, no matter what their background economically, how stressed the family is, if they go through that period, they have a 50% greater chance of going all the way through to high school, beyond that, without getting in trouble. I mean, we have to invest in the things we know work.
I am proposing what would be the most significant middle-class tax cut that this country has seen in generations, and it would lift up families who are making less than $100,000 a year by giving them a tax credit of up to $6,000 a year that they can collect up to $500 a month, which will be all the difference between those families being able to get through the end of the month with dignity or not. In our country today, almost half of American families are a $400 unexpected expense away from complete upheaval. And for too long in our country, the policies have been written in a way that have favored the top 1% and the rich, and not favored working families and middle-class families. And my policy would lift up 1 in 2 American families, 3 in 4 American children, 60% of black households, and it is, I think, long overdue that we focus on lifting families up and giving them the support they deserve.
You know, automation is transforming our economy, and we can't pretend that it can just be stopped or reversed. I think part of the core falsehood of the current White House and the campaign that got us here was the idea that we could somehow turn back the clock. I don't think you can ever have an honest politics that revolves around the word again. So it's not about stopping or reversing technology. It is about making sure that the tectonic social and economic changes that it could drive are changes that can actually work for us, because the pace of change is only going to accelerate. So you mentioned the word tactical, and some of these things are very technical and near to the ground. Making sure, for example, that the United States is keeping pace with our competitors like China when it comes to the investments we're making in AI and automation, so that when those leaps and bounds are made, hopefully they're made in and by our country. But it also rises, I think, to a higher level, which is how do we make sure that when those job transitions happen, and there's just going to be more of them, our generation is likely to change careers more frequently than our parents changed job titles. And what we've got to do in that environment is make it less of a disruptive event in your entire life when those changes occur. It's why we need portable benefits. It's why the conversation about Medicare for all is so important. It's why we might even need to look at guaranteed income for working people as a policy that will help smooth the edges of that.